This isn't just royal drama. This is the kind of revelation that makes you question every smiling photo, every hand-holding appearance, every carefully staged or stronger than ever moment you've ever seen from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Because according to explosive claims from veteran biographer Tom Bauer, there's a clause, a single, buried legal time bomb that may have quietly turned their love story into a financial trap, and Harry may not have realized what he signed until it was far too late.
I think personally, they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
A man who she abandoned for months to the media and now presents her mother, Doria, speaking for the first time, telling outright lies about her ex-husband. I mean, this was a calculated attempt against the family.
Tom Bauer, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
You know, Piers, you're the first person to say how limited Prince Harry is, unfortunately, and how his wife trades off her husband's fame and fortune, or not so great fortune now. I mean, this is the problem. But we're still interested because, after all, he's a great character in our modern day.
And so he became hypersensitive and blamed the media for the crashes of his relationships, never thinking that they could have something to do with himself. So he's a very complicated, depressed, unintelligent man who is seeking a role and has got really nobody on whom he could rely, which is in the end where Meghan stepped in. I mean, a needy man met a woman who could help him with his needs.
Aggressive PR for the Sussexes got way beyond herself because she really doesn't understand the British royal family or Britain, but understands how to project her clients. And so I think she got it wrong by leaking it or even letting anyone know about it.
And of course, the news today that Harry's memoir is going to be published in the near future will just alarm the royal family here in England about what he's actually going to say to earn his money. I do think that when you're mocked so publicly as they've been, their value begins to nosedive pretty quickly. And I don't think they're finding any more sources of income.
Last week, we brought to you fresh news that Harry had been staying at the San Vicente bungalows to take a break from his family, despite owning a sprawling Montecito property together with Guesthouse. And this week, those rumours are intensifying.
Let's slow this down, because this is where the whispers turn into something colder. Bauer isn't some random blogger tossing out palace gossip for clicks. He's built a career digging into powerful people who thought their secrets were airtight. And now he's pointing straight at page 14, clause 7 of a marital agreement tied to the Sussexes, a clause he claims reshapes who controls the empire they built after walking away from royal life. And suddenly, little things don't look so little anymore. That PR firm reappearing, the solo business filings, the subtle shift from we to me. Bauer suggests those aren't random career moves. They're chess pieces sliding into position.
Meghan herself.
And Meghan herself.
In the months before she met Harry, was setting up paparazzi pictures in London. She now acts as if the paparazzi are literally the devil incarnate.
She begged the paparazzi to photograph her and they wouldn't. And when they did, she says, "Oh, I don't want to, I'm hurt." And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Because what do you make of that? Because as you know, Harry was always very insistent.
Before anyone rolls their eyes and says this is just another royal rumor cycle, here's why Bauer's claims are getting traction in certain circles. His reputation. He's known for building legal-style cases, not fluffy narratives. The man has spent decades interviewing insiders, cross-checking documents, and talking to people who sign contracts, not just read headlines. So when he says he spoke with legal professionals familiar with how high-profile marriage agreements are structured, especially when royal status collides with American law, people listen, even if they don't like what they hear.
So many surprises, by the way, tucked away in your book. Everybody is already buzzing because you reveal that Simon is not a fan of Jennifer Lopez. I was not aware of this. You say he can't stand her. So set the record straight for us, Tom. What's his beef with J-Lo?
Well, he just found her just too vain and too self-interested, which seems like he met his own match. But in the end, Simon doesn't really like many celebrities. I noticed when I went with him to the Oprah Winfrey Show and many other places around Hollywood and elsewhere, he's a rather shy guy. He's always afraid of being associated with people who are bigger than him or who might put him in the shade. But in the end, he's pretty critical of people. He doesn't like Elton John. He doesn't like many of the people who are really famous in the music business. You know, he's critical.
According to Bauer's reporting, the agreement between Harry and Meghan wasn't just a standard prenup about houses and savings accounts. Their situation was uniquely tangled. British royal expectations on one side, California's community property laws on the other. That alone makes any marital contract between them a legal puzzle. But here's the part Bauer emphasizes. Intellectual property. Not just money sitting in a bank, but stories, brand identity, production deals, and future earnings tied to personal narratives. In the modern celebrity economy, that's where the real power lives. And allegedly, that's where the clause gets very specific.
The fairy tale Prince Harry and Meghan Markle embarked on in 2016 become an absolute nightmare for them. Despite marrying in St. George's Chapel in Windsor, it seems like life hasn't been so rosy for the couple. They have gone through endless challenges, the vast majority of which are all self-inflicted. And this weekend, we had some new news that seems to kind of reiterate the idea that Meghan Markle, she wants to go back to the past. She wants to relive her glory days because she has hired Sunshine Sachs as her new PR representatives, who were representing her back in 2016. And at the same time, Harry is in the UK fighting for a court case that really has no bearing on any of this, but we have heard endlessly that he wants to reestablish himself.
Royal adjacent agreements often deal with titles, public conduct, and what happens if a marriage ends under global scrutiny. But California law adds another layer. Earnings during marriage are typically shared. That includes entertainment deals, production contracts, and brand partnerships. Bauer claims the amendment to their agreement, added after their move to the US, and the launch of their media ventures didn't just split assets. It may have addressed who controls the business machinery behind the Sussex brand itself, who negotiates, who manages, who has final say. And if his sources are correct, Meghan's role as the primary deal-maker may have been written into the legal structure in a way that gives her long-term leverage over joint ventures created during the marriage.
And what would Diana think of Harry attacking William in that way? She'd be appalled by her son's behavior. And that was, again, so nauseating, the way he kept on bringing in Diana. Diana, who appealed to the media all the time, who phoned journalists secretly, who brought Martin Bashir into her office, who cooperated with Andrew Morton, who kept on calling Richard Kay. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Well, I do think the Sussex overdrive is unbelievable. But, I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in. I mean, I think that there are two reasons. One is I think that William wouldn't allow it. And secondly, the moment he got back to America, he immediately promoted Disney and his trip to Disney World, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain.
Now, here's where the timeline starts raising eyebrows. Bauer alleges that an amendment was signed after they stepped back from royal duties, a moment when everything in their lives was shifting. New country, new business model, massive contracts reportedly on the table. Amending a prenup after major life changes isn't unusual. Lawyers recommend it all the time. But Bauer's claim is that Harry trusted the process and the person guiding it without fully grasping the long-term consequences of the language being added. He paints a picture of someone emotionally committed, leaning on advisors and a spouse he believed was protecting both of them, while the fine print may have been doing something more one-sided. And whether you believe that or not, the business moves that followed are what fuel the speculation. Since 2022, Meghan has launched ventures increasingly tied directly to her own name. Trademark filings, solo branding, appearances centered on individual projects. Meanwhile, their joint foundation and media output have slowed or shifted focus. Supporters say that's just smart diversification. Critics say it looks like someone building an independent runway. Then there's the PR angle. Bauer notes the return of Sunshine Sachs to Meghan's orbit, a firm known for handling high-profile image management. In Hollywood, bringing in heavyweight crisis communicators before major life transitions is practically a ritual. Is that proof of anything? No. But in the world Bauer describes, it's another puzzle piece. He also points to the structure of their business entities, including their work under Archewell. If one partner is listed more prominently in certain filings or holds specific managerial authority, that can matter later in ways most couples never think about during the honeymoon phase of a joint brand. And then there's the house, the lifestyle, the expenses. Public estimates of earnings versus reported setbacks in some media projects. Bauer's sources, he says, interpret certain financial shifts as asset positioning, the kind lawyers advise when people want clarity and protection around personal holdings. None of this confirms a divorce is coming, but it feeds the narrative that one party may be better legally insulated if it does. The most emotional part of Bauer's theory isn't about money, it's about awareness. He suggests Harry may feel that things are off, that the pressure of lawsuits, public battles, and professional uncertainty has taken a toll. But understanding emotional strain and understanding contractual leverage are two very different things. If Bauer is right, the real shock wouldn't be a separation, it would be the discovery that the legal groundwork for one was quietly laid years earlier. And that's the twist that turns us from celebrity gossip into something almost Shakespearean, trust, power, love, and paperwork all tangled together, with global headlines waiting in the wings. Because if Clause 7 says what Bauer's sources claim it says, then the fairy tale exit from royal life may have come with a second hidden exit plan, one only fully visible in hindsight. And this is where the story stops being about romance and starts feeling like strategy. Because while the world was watching interviews, documentaries, podcasts, and carefully lit anniversary photos, Bauer's version of events suggests something else was unfolding quietly in the background. Paperwork, filings, registrations, structures, the kind of moves you only notice when you line them up on a timeline and step back. He points to the period right after the big entertainment deals were announced. The headlines screamed 9 figures, global influence, a new media dynasty in the making. But behind the scenes, projects stalled, concepts were dropped, and not every contract reached its full potential. In Hollywood, that happens all the time. Deals are structured in stages, with payments tied to delivery. But Bauer claims that during this uneven rollout, Meghan's professional footprint began shifting in a very specific direction. More ventures tied directly to her name, fewer that were purely joint. One example often discussed is her lifestyle brand, widely known as American Riviera Orchard, which has been positioned as a distinctly personal project rather than a shared Sussex enterprise. To supporters, that's a woman building her own identity. To skeptics, it looks like someone making sure their income streams don't rely on a marriage staying intact. At the same time, Harry's public focus leaned heavily into legal battles and legacy issues, lawsuits, security disputes, ongoing fights with sections of the British press. Those cases are emotionally charged and financially draining. Lawyers, court fees, expert witnesses, it adds up fast. Bauer's theory asks an uncomfortable question. If one partner is increasingly exposed to legal risk while the other is building separate commercial lanes, what happens if the partnership itself fractures? He suggests that's where the alleged clause becomes devastating, not because it takes money away overnight, but because it determines control. In celebrity divorces, control over brand rights, production companies, and intellectual property can matter more than who keeps which sofa. Who can tell the story? Who can sign the next deal? Who can continue a brand built on 2 names, if only one is still legally attached? Bauer believes the amendment he's described was crafted with those future scenarios in mind. He claims legal advisors familiar with complex, high-profile splits told him the language he's heard about sounds less like a romantic safeguard and more like a business exit ramp. And then there's the public image choreography. Appearances that once seemed like united front moments now get dissected for micro signals. Who stands where, who speaks more, whose projects get top billing. That may sound petty, but in celebrity culture, branding is oxygen. If one half of a power couple is increasingly framed as the primary driver of deals, meetings, and new launches, that narrative can later support claims about who truly built and sustained the business side of the marriage. Bauer's critics say he's connecting dots that don't belong together. They argue that Meghan's solo branding is a natural evolution, that Harry's legal fights are personal missions, and that not every strategic decision is a pre-divorce maneuver. And that's fair. High-profile couples often juggle joint and individual careers without it meaning the end. But Bauer insists the pattern matches something he's seen before, a slow, methodical separation of professional identities long before any official announcement. He references Meghan's first marriage, saying sources who observed her earlier divorce described her as meticulous, future-focused, and determined to walk away with independence intact. In his narrative, that wasn't a one-time mindset, it was a template. The emotional heart of his argument, though, circles back to Harry. Bauer paints him as someone driven by loyalty and instinct, less fascinated by contract clauses than by trust and shared vision. If that's accurate, it sets up a painful contrast. One partner playing emotional defense, the other playing long-term legal offense. And then there's the question everyone whispers but no one can answer from the outside. The children. In any cross-border, high-profile family, custody isn't just about love. It's about jurisdiction, residency, schooling, stability. California courts tend to focus on continuity. If one parent is established as the primary day-to-day caregiver in the state where the children live, that can weigh heavily in decisions. Bauer suggests the geographic and lifestyle choices made over the past few years could carry legal weight if things ever reach that stage. Again, none of this proves anything is about to happen. Marriages go through intense periods and recover. Business structures can look strategic without being sinister. But Bauer's narrative is compelling because it reframes the past few years not as random turbulence, but as a sequence. First, the fairy tale wedding, then the dramatic royal exit, then the media empire launch, then the amendments, the filings, the solo ventures, the PR recalibrations. In his telling, those aren't chapters in a love story under pressure, they're steps in a contingency plan unfolding in plain sight. The most haunting part of his theory is the idea of delayed realization. That one day, in a quiet room with lawyers and documents spread across the table, Harry might discover that decisions made in trust years earlier locked in outcomes he never imagined. Not because anyone shouted or slammed doors, but because ink dried on paper while life was moving too fast to scrutinize every line. That's why this story grips people. It's not just about titles, money, or Montecito mansions. It's about the fear that love and business don't just coexist at that level, they compete. And sometimes, the person who treats the relationship like a partnership of hearts is up against someone treating it like a partnership of assets. Bauer may be wrong. The marriage may hold. The clause may be far less dramatic than he suggests. But the reason his claims won't go away is simple. In a world where image is curated and narratives are managed, the idea that the real story is hidden in legal language feels chillingly plausible. Because if page 14, clause 7 really says what he believes it says, then the biggest royal shock of the decade won't come from a balcony appearance or a tell-all interview. It'll come from a courthouse filing, and the sudden realization that the ending was drafted years before anyone admitted the story was in trouble.